Boss, she's not on the list. A voice growled behind them, and she felt the stranger's entire body go rigid against hers. She'd grabbed the first man she saw after her boyfriend's public betrayal, pressing her lips to his in blind rage and desperation. But the way everyone in the crowd suddenly scattered told her she'd made a catastrophic mistake. He pulled back slowly, his dark eyes scanning her face with deadly curiosity, then asked the question that made her knees buckle. Who sent you to kill me? Welcome to Wonderpath Stories, besties. Please like, share, and subscribe. Elena Hale stood frozen in that narrow alley behind the restaurant, her lips still tingling from the kiss, her mind struggling to process what was happening. The man she'd impulsively grabbed was tall, Korean, dressed in a perfectly tailored black suit that probably cost more than her rent, and his dark eyes held the kind of cold calculation that came from making life and death decisions regularly. Behind him, 3 men in similar suits had their hands inside their jackets, watching her with the kind of stillness that preceded violence. I'm not here to kill anyone, Elena managed, her voice steadier than she felt. My boyfriend just proposed to my best friend in there. I saw you smoking out here and I wasn't thinking straight. The man tilted his head slightly, studying her with an intensity that made her feel exposed. Your boyfriend proposed to someone else. Yes, at my birthday dinner, in front of everyone I know. Elena's voice cracked on the last word, humiliation flooding back through the shock. The man's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes, recognition maybe or understanding. He turned to the men behind him and said something in Korean, his tone clipped and authoritative. They hesitated, clearly wanting to argue, then slowly stepped back. When he looked at Elena again, his face was still unreadable, but his voice had lost some of its edge. I'm Jae-Rin Kang. You just kissed the head of the Kang syndicate in front of half my organization. That was either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid. Elena's stomach dropped. She'd heard the name. Everyone in Hanel City had heard the name. The Kang family controlled everything the city's elite pretended didn't exist, businesses that operated in shadows, protection that came with blood, power that made politicians nervous. I'm sorry, I'll leave. I won't tell anyone I was here. Too late for that. Jae-Rin pulled a cigarette from his pocket, lit it with movements that were almost lazy. Every person in that restaurant saw you kiss me. By morning, half the city will know. He took a drag, studying her through the smoke. What's your name? Elena Hale. And I really am sorry. I wasn't trying to cause problems. I just wanted to feel something other than humiliated. Something that might have been amusement crossed his face. You chose an expensive way to feel something. Now you're connected to me whether you want to be or not. His eyes moved over her, not in the way Evan used to look at her, with that measuring gaze that always found her lacking, but with genuine interest, like he was seeing something worth noticing. You're a lawyer, corporate contracts, if I remember correctly. Elena blinked. How do you know that? Jae-Rin smiled, and it wasn't a kind smile. I know everything that happens in this city. I know Evan Kwon has been embezzling from his own company. I know Sora Han's family needs that merger to cover their own financial crimes. And I know you've been building a case against corporate fraud for the last 6 months without realizing your boyfriend was one of your targets. The words hit Elena like physical blows. That's not possible. She'd been working on a massive embezzlement case, tracking shell companies and offshore accounts, but she'd never connected any of it to Evan. It's not only possible, it's fact. Jae-Rin flicked ash from his cigarette. Your boyfriend has been stealing millions. The Han family has been laundering money through legitimate businesses. Tonight's proposal wasn't about love. It was about 2 corrupt families merging their assets before you could expose them. Elena felt the ground shift beneath her feet. She thought about all those late nights Evan had claimed he was working, all those business trips, all those times he'd discouraged her from attending corporate events. He'd been hiding from her, protecting himself from her. I need proof. Elena's voice came out sharper than she intended. If what you're saying is true, I need documentation, evidence, something I can use. Jae-Rin's expression shifted, interest sharpening into something more dangerous, more focused. I can get you proof. I can get you everything you need to destroy both families, but nothing comes free in my world. What do you want? Elena met his eyes, refusing to look away even though every instinct told her she was stepping into something she couldn't control. 6 months. Jae-Rin crushed his cigarette under his heel. You become my fiancé publicly. You attend events with me. You let everyone in this city believe you chose me over him. In return, I give you the evidence you need, and I protect you from the consequences. Why would you do that? Elena's mind was racing, trying to find the trap, the angle, the real reason a man like Jae-Rin Kang would involve himself in her personal disaster. Because Evan Kwon and the Han family have been operating in my territory without permission. Because their fraud is affecting businesses I protect. And because a public relationship with you sends a message that I'm untouchable enough to claim what other men discard. Jae-Rin stepped closer, and Elena caught the scent of expensive cologne and cigarette smoke. Plus, the look on Evan's face when he sees you on my arm will be worth the inconvenience. Elena should have said no, should have walked away, should have handled this through legal channels and proper procedures. But she thought about Evan's face in that restaurant, the practiced surprise, the way Sora had smiled at her like it was a secret they'd been keeping for months. She thought about how small they'd made her feel, how disposable. 6 months. Elena extended her hand. I want that evidence within 2 weeks. I want protection for my father, and I want everything in writing. Jae-Rin's smile was slow and dangerous as he took her hand. His grip was firm, warm, possessive. You're going to be interesting, Elena Hale. My driver will pick you up tomorrow at noon. Bring enough clothes for a week. You're moving into the estate. Wait, I didn't agree to that. But Jae-Rin was already walking away, his bodyguards falling into step around him. One of them, a younger man with sharp features, paused and handed Elena a business card. The boss doesn't make suggestions, Miss Hale. He makes arrangements. Be ready. Then he was gone too, and Elena was left standing in that alley, holding a business card with nothing but a phone number and wondering what she'd just agreed to. The next morning, Elena woke to find her apartment filled with boxes. Designer luggage sat in her living room, the kind that cost thousands, already packed with clothes she didn't own. A note in precise handwriting lay on top. These will fit better than anything you currently own. The driver arrives at noon. Don't be late. Elena should have been furious, should have called the police. Instead, she opened the first suitcase and found clothes in her exact size, cut to flatter her curves instead of hiding them, in colors that made her dark skin glow. There were dresses that looked like art, jeans that would fit perfectly, shoes that were actually her style, not the conservative pieces she'd been buying to please Evan. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. She opened it to find the same young bodyguard from the night before, this time holding a phone. From Mr. Kang. He'll call in 5 minutes. Then he was gone, leaving Elena holding what looked like a burner phone, the kind people used when they didn't want conversations traced. When it rang, she answered immediately. I didn't agree to you going through my apartment. Elena tried to sound firm, professional, but her voice wavered. Your apartment security is terrible. Jae-Rin sounded distracted, like he was handling multiple things at once. I had someone fix your locks. You're welcome. And before you complain about the clothes, I have eyes. I know what size you wear and I know what you like. Those corporate costumes you've been hiding in don't suit you. Elena bit back her automatic response. How did you know what I like? Lucky guess. But Jae-Rin's tone suggested it wasn't a guess at all. Or maybe I pay attention to details other men miss. Like the fact that you prefer silver jewelry over gold. That you buy art books even though you can barely afford them. That you look at clothes in store windows, but never let yourself buy them, because someone made you believe wanting beautiful things was selfish. The accuracy stung. Evan had always criticized her spending, her choices, her desire for anything that wasn't practical and conservative. How did you know all that? I told you, I know everything that happens in my city. And you're mine now, which means I know everything about you. The possessiveness in his voice should have frightened her. Instead, it sent something warm and dangerous through her chest. The driver will be there in an hour. Don't keep him waiting. The Kang estate wasn't what Elena expected. She'd imagined something cold and fortress-like, all concrete and security systems, But the sprawling property was beautiful, traditional Korean architecture blended with modern luxury. Gardens that looked like they required an army of gardeners. Water features that turned the space into something peaceful despite the armed guards at every entrance. The driver, an older man who'd barely spoken during the hour-long trip, led Elena through the main house to a wing that was clearly separated from the rest. "Your rooms," he said in English, opening double doors to reveal a suite that was bigger than her entire apartment. Elena stepped inside, taking in the bedroom, sitting area, private bathroom, walk-in closet. Everything was decorated in soft neutrals with touches of deep blue and gold. It was elegant, beautiful, nothing like the cold, minimalist spaces Evan had preferred. "Mr. Kang said to tell you he'll be back this evening. Make yourself comfortable. There are clothes in the closet. Staff will bring meals if you're hungry. Don't leave the estate without security." Then he was gone, leaving Elena alone in luxury that felt like a gilded cage. She spent the afternoon exploring her new space, finding more clothes perfectly selected for her, jewelry she'd never owned, shoes that fit like they'd been made for her. Every detail was considered. Every choice suggested someone had studied her preferences with unsettling accuracy. By evening, she was packing, her mind working through the implications of what she'd agreed to. She'd just moved in with a crime lord. She was pretending to be his fiancé. She was using him to get revenge on Evan while he was using her to send messages to his rivals. It was insane, reckless, probably the most dangerous thing she'd ever done. The door opened without warning. Jae-Rin walked in like he owned the space, which he did, still in his suit from earlier, looking like he'd spent the day doing normal business things instead of whatever it was crime lords actually did. "You didn't run." "Why would I run?" Elena crossed her arms, trying to look more confident than she felt. "We have an agreement." Most people would have run. Jae-Rin moved closer, his eyes traveling over her in a way that made her skin warm. They would have convinced themselves this was a mistake, that they could handle Evan and Sarah on their own, that involving me was worse than dealing with public humiliation. Maybe I'm not most people. Elena held his gaze, refusing to back down even though he was standing close enough that she could feel his body heat. "No, you're definitely not." Jae-Rin reached out, his fingers brushing her jaw in a touch that was barely there but sent electricity through her. "You're going to make this interesting. Tomorrow we have our first public appearance. Charity gala. Half of Hanul City's elite will be there, including Evan and Sarah. I need you ready." Elena's stomach twisted. "That's fast. We just agreed to this yesterday." Jae-Rin smiled, and it was predatory. "Exactly. Fast enough that they won't have time to prepare. Fast enough that everyone will be talking about you instead of their engagement. Fast enough that Evan will see exactly what he threw away." "What do you get out of this?" Elena asked again, because she still didn't fully understand his angle. "You're putting yourself in the middle of my mess for revenge that isn't even yours." Something dark flickered in Jae-Rin's eyes. "Let's just say the Kwon family owes me a debt they don't even know about yet. And collecting that debt while making you happy is efficient." His hand dropped from her face, but the warmth of his touch lingered. "Get some rest. Tomorrow starts early." He turned to leave, but Elena's voice stopped him. "Jae-Rin." He paused, looking back. "Thank you for the clothes, for this. Even if it's fake, it's more than anyone else has offered." "It's not fake." Jae-Rin's expression was serious, intense in a way that made her breath catch. "The arrangement is temporary, but nothing about how I protect what's mine is fake. Remember that." Then he was gone, leaving Elena alone with her racing thoughts and the growing realization that she'd just stepped into something far more complex than a simple revenge scheme. She'd stepped into Jae-Rin Kang's world, and nothing about that world was simple. The next morning started before dawn. Elena woke to find a team of stylists in her suite, makeup artists and hair specialists who worked with quiet efficiency, transforming her into someone she barely recognized. The dress they brought was midnight blue, cut to celebrate her curves, with a neckline that was elegant without being conservative. Jewelry that looked like it cost more than her car, probably did, sapphires and diamonds that caught the light with every movement. When Jae-Rin came to collect her, His reaction was barely visible, just a slight widening of his eyes, a pause that lasted half a second too long. "You look perfect." He extended his arm and Elena took it, feeling the solid warmth of him through expensive fabric. "Remember, we're madly in love. I pursued you after seeing you at a conference. You resisted at first because of your relationship with Evan, but eventually you couldn't deny what we had. We've been together for 2 months in secret." That's a lot of detail for a fake relationship. Elena tried to ignore how natural it felt to be this close to him, how right her hand felt resting on his arm. Jae-Rin glanced at her, something unreadable in his expression. "The best lies are built on truth. I did see you at a conference 3 months ago. You were presenting on corporate fraud. You were brilliant, focused. You didn't notice anyone in that room except the evidence you were presenting." He paused. "I've been watching you since then." Elena's steps faltered. "You've been watching me for 3 months? That's not creepy at all." The sarcasm was automatic, defensive, a shield against the way his words made something in her chest tighten. "I protect my interests, and you were investigating crimes connected to my territory." Jae-Rin's tone was matter of fact. It was business at first, then it became something else. "What else?" Elena asked, but they'd reached the car, and Jae-Rin simply handed her into the back seat, his expression closing off into something unreadable. The gala was everything Elena had expected, old money and new power mixing in a glittering display of wealth and influence. Crystal chandeliers, champagne served by waiters in white gloves, orchestra music drifting through rooms decorated with flowers that probably cost thousands. It was beautiful, oppressive, exactly the kind of event Evan had always dragged her to while making her feel like she didn't belong. But arriving with Jae-Rin Kang was different. The moment they walked in, conversations stopped. Heads turned. Elena felt the weight of every gaze, the speculation, the shock, the envy. Jae-Rin's hand settled on the small of her back, possessive and warm, guiding her through the crowd with the confidence of someone who owned every room he entered. "That's her," the whispers started immediately. "That's the woman Evan Kwon was dating. She's with Jae-Rin Kang now. How did that happen? Did you see the way he's looking at her? Like she's the only person in the room." Elena kept her expression calm, pleasant, but her heart was hammering. "This is insane. Everyone's starring. Let them." Jae-Rin leaned close, his breath warm against her ear. "Let them see that you're mine. Let them wonder how Evan was stupid enough to lose you." His hand pressed slightly against her back, a reminder of his presence, his claim. They made it halfway across the ballroom before Elena saw them. Evan and Sora, dressed like the perfect couple, his hand on her waist in a mirror of how Jae-Rin was holding Elena. For a moment, their eyes met across the room, and Elena saw shock, confusion, something that might have been regret flash across Evan's face. "Smile." Jae-Rin's voice was low, commanding. "Show him it doesn't hurt." Elena forced her lips into a smile, the kind that didn't reach her eyes, the kind that said she'd moved on to something better, someone better. Jae-Rin's hand moved from her back to her waist, pulling her closer against his side in a gesture that was unmistakably possessive. Evan started toward them, but Chairman Han Min-seok, Sora's father, stopped him with a hand on his shoulder. The older man's face was carefully blank, but his eyes held something dangerous as he watched Jae-Rin and Elena. "He knows." Elena kept her voice quiet. "He knows we're playing a game. Of course he knows." Jae-Rin sounded amused. "But he also knows he can't call me out publicly without admitting why it bothers him. We're in a stalemate and I hold all the cards." "How can you be so calm about this?" Elena's nerves were fraying, the weight of everyone's attention pressing down on her. "Because I've been playing these games since I was a child." Jae-Rin turned her to face him, his hands settling on her waist in a way that forced her to focus only on him. "Dance with me. Make them all wish they were me." Before Elena could respond, he was leading her onto the dance floor, one hand still on her waist, the other capturing her fingers in a grip that was gentle but unbreakable. The orchestra was playing something slow, romantic, and Elena found herself pressed against him, closer than was strictly proper, able to feel every breath he took. "You're shaking." Jae-Rin's voice was softer now, concerned in a way that surprised her. "Adrenaline," Elena admitted. "I'm not used to being the center of attention like this. Evan always preferred I stay in the background." Evan was an idiot. Jae-Rin's hand tightened on her waist. You're beautiful, brilliant, stronger than you give yourself credit for. Any man with eyes should want you as the center of attention. The words hit something deep in Elena's chest, some part of her that had been starving for exactly that kind of recognition. She looked up at Jae-Rin, really looked at him, and saw something in his eyes that didn't match the cold crime lord persona. Something warm, real, dangerous in an entirely different way. This isn't real. Elena reminded herself. We're pretending. Jae-Rin's eyes held hers, dark and intense and full of something that made her pulse race. Are we? Because it feels pretty real to me. Then Evan was there, cutting in without asking permission, his voice tight. Elena, what are you doing? You can't be serious about this. Elena pulled away from Jae-Rin, forcing herself to face Evan with her head high. I'm doing exactly what you did. Moving on, upgrading, finding someone who actually values me. With him, Evan's voice dripped disdain. He's a criminal, Elena. He's dangerous. Everyone knows what the Kang family does, and you're a fraud. Elena's voice was cold. Everyone knows what you've been doing too, Evan. All those business trips, all those late nights. Did you really think I wouldn't find out about the embezzlement? Evan went pale. I don't know what you're talking about. Save it. Elena felt Jae-Rin's presence behind her, solid and supportive without being overbearing. I'm a corporate lawyer specializing in fraud. You should have been more careful. This is absurd. Evan looked between Elena and Jae-Rin, his expression shifting from shock to anger. You're making a mistake. You're throwing away everything we built. We didn't build anything. Elena cut him off. You built lies while I built a career. And now I'm choosing someone who sees me as more than a convenient cover for his crimes. Jae-Rin's hand settled on her shoulder, a subtle claim of ownership. She's done talking to you, Kwon. Walk away before this gets unpleasant. The threat in his voice was unmistakable, casual, the tone of someone who made threats regularly and followed through. Evan looked like he wanted to argue, but Chairman Han appeared at his elbow, pulling him away with a terse apology. Elena watched them go, feeling a savage satisfaction that surprised her. You did well. Jae-Rin turned her back to face him. That was harder than you expected, wasn't it? Yes. Elena's voice wavered. I thought it would feel good to confront him. Instead, I just feel angry. Good. Jae-Rin's hand cupped her face, his thumb brushing her cheek in a gesture that was far too intimate for their fake relationship. Anger is better than grief. Use it. Let it burn away everything he made you believe about yourself. The rest of the evening passed in a blur. More dancing. More careful conversations where Elena played the role of devoted girlfriend. More lingering looks from Evan and Sara that suggested they hadn't expected her to move on so quickly or so publicly. By the time Jae-Rin finally led her back to the car, Elena was exhausted, emotionally wrung out in a way that had nothing to do with physical tiredness. You were perfect, Jae-Rin said as they drove through the city. Everyone believed it. Even I almost believed it. Almost? Elena looked at him, trying to read his expression in the dim light. What part didn't you believe? That you're only doing this for revenge. Jae-Rin's eyes found hers. I think part of you wants this to be real. Part of you likes being with me. Elena's breath caught. That's a dangerous thing to think. Maybe. But his smile was slow, predatory, doesn't make it less true. The following days fell into a pattern that was simultaneously comfortable and terrifying. Elena spent mornings working from the estate, reviewing the evidence Jae-Rin had provided, building her case against Evan and the Han family. The documentation was extensive, damning, more than enough to destroy both families financially and legally. She didn't ask how Jae-Rin had obtained it. Some questions were safer left unasked. Afternoons were training. Jae-Rin insisted she learn self-defense, hired an instructor who taught her how to fall, how to block, how to use an attacker's momentum against them. You're a target now, he'd said when she protested. Anyone who wants to hurt me might try to use you. I need you able to defend yourself. Evenings were public appearances, gallery openings, corporate dinners, charity functions. Each event was an opportunity to play their roles, to let Hanel City see them as a couple, to make Evan and Sara increasingly uncomfortable. Elena found herself enjoying it more than she should, found herself leaning into Jae-Rin's touches, laughing at his dry humor, getting lost in conversations that had nothing to do with their arrangement. Nights were the hardest. They'd return to the estate, and the intimacy of the space would press down on Elena, reminding her that this was temporary, that Jae-Rin was playing a role just like she was. Except sometimes, she'd catch him watching her with an expression that didn't fit their arrangement. Something softer. Something that looked dangerously like genuine feeling. A month into their arrangement, everything shifted. They were at a corporate event, something tedious about international investment opportunities, when Elena noticed someone watching her. Not the casual curiosity she'd grown accustomed to, but focused observation, the kind that raised instincts she didn't know she had. She moved closer to Jae-Rin, her hand finding his arm. "There's a man by the bar. Gray suit. He's been watching me for the last 10 minutes. Jae-Rin's expression didn't change, but his body went tense against hers. "Don't look at him directly. We're leaving." "What's wrong?" Elena kept her voice light, pleasant, like they were having a normal conversation. "That's Park Jun-seo. He works for the Kwon family." Jae-Rin guided her toward the exit with movements that looked casual but were purposeful. "If he's here watching you, it means they're planning something." They made it to the car without incident, but the drive back to the estate felt different, charged with a tension that had nothing to do with their fake relationship. Jae-Rin made calls in rapid Korean, his tone clipped and commanding. Security increased as soon as they arrived, guards doubling at every entrance. "You need to tell me what's happening," Elena demanded once they were alone in her suite. "What are they planning?" "I don't know yet." Jae-Rin paced like a caged animal. "But the Kwon and Han families are desperate. You have evidence that could destroy them. They need to eliminate that threat before you can use it." "Eliminate the threat." Elena's voice was steady even though her hands were shaking. "You mean eliminate me?" Jae-Rin stopped packing, his eyes finding hers with an intensity that stole her breath. "No one is eliminating you. I'll burn both families to the ground before I let anyone hurt you." "This is insane." Elena's control cracked slightly. "I'm not worth starting a war over, Jae-Rin. I'm just some lawyer who got caught up in your world. You're not just anything." Jae-Rin closed the distance between them in 2 steps. "You're mine. That makes you worth everything." "We're not real." Elena's voice wavered. "This is an arrangement, remember? A business deal." Jae-Rin's hands came up to frame her face, his touch gentle despite the intensity in his eyes. "Is it? Because I stopped pretending weeks ago. I stopped treating this like business the moment you smiled at me, like I was more than what everyone says I am." Elena's heart was pounding so hard she could hear it. "We can't do this. This isn't part of our deal. Deals change." Jae-Rin's thumb brushed her lower lip. "I want to change this one. I want you for real, Elena, not for 6 months, not for revenge, for as long as you'll have me." "You're a crime lord." Elena's objection sounded weak even to her own ears. "You do terrible things. People fear you." "Yes." Jae-Rin didn't deny it, didn't try to soften what he was. "I'm exactly what everyone says. Dangerous. Ruthless. Not someone you should want. But I've never wanted anyone the way I want you. I've never protected anyone the way I protect you. And I've never cared about another person's happiness more than I care about yours." The confession hung between them, honest and terrifying. Elena should have stepped back, should have reminded him of their arrangement, should have protected herself from the inevitable heartbreak of caring about someone whose world was built on violence. Instead, she rose on her toes and kissed him. It wasn't like their first kiss in the alley, desperate and impulsive. This was deliberate, a choice, an answer to his confession. Jae-Rin made a sound low in his throat, his arms coming around her, pulling her against him with a hunger that matched her own. The kiss deepened, became something consuming, years of loneliness and careful control burning away in seconds. They barely made it to her bedroom. Clothes disappeared in a trail across the floor, replaced by heated skin and desperate touches. Jae-Rin worshipped every curve Evan had made her feel ashamed of, his hands and mouth mapping her body like it was sacred. Elena lost herself in sensation, in the feeling of being wanted completely, chosen without reservation, seen in a way she'd never experienced before. Afterward, they lay tangled together, Elena's head on Jae-Rin's chest, his hand stroking lazy patterns on her back. She could feel his heart beating steadily beneath her ear, strong and real. "This changes everything," she whispered. "Yes," Jae-Rin's voice was rough. "Is that a problem?" Elena lifted her head to look at him. "I don't know. Ask me again when I can think clearly." He smiled, the expression transforming his usually cold face into something warm, almost boyish. "Take your time. I'm not going anywhere." But morning brought reality crashing back. Elena woke alone, the space beside her cold, and found a note on the pillow. "Had to handle something. Stay inside until I get back." The command rankled, reminded her that despite last night, Jae-Rin was still who he was, someone used to giving orders and expecting obedience. She was packing her suite, frustrated and confused when her phone rang. Not the burner, her personal cell. The caller ID showed her father's number. "Dad," Elena answered immediately. Her father, Justice Daniel Zhao, was a federal judge, the one person whose opinion still mattered to her. "Elena," her father's voice was strained. "We need to talk." "About what?" "You know what, you and Jae-Rin Kang." "Elena, what are you doing?" "He's dangerous. He's connected to organized crime. You're destroying your reputation, your career, everything you've worked for." The words hit harder coming from him than they had from anyone else. "Dad, you don't understand. I know about Evan. About what he was doing. I know," her father's voice gentled slightly. "I also know you're using Kang to get revenge. But at what cost? What happens when this is over, when he's done with you?" "He's not going to be done with me." Elena realized the truth of it as she said it. "This isn't fake anymore, Dad. I care about him." The silence on the other end was heavy. "Then I'm begging you as your father to walk away. Before you're in too deep. Before you can't get out." The call ended badly, with Elena feeling torn between the world she'd come from and the world she'd chosen. She was still processing when Jae-Rin returned, his expression grim. "We have a problem. Chairman Han knows about the evidence. He's moving assets offshore. We need to act faster than planned." "How much faster?" "Tonight." Jae-Rin pulled out his phone, showed her financial transactions happening in real time. "If we wait, he'll disappear everything. You need to file your case now." Elena looked at the evidence, at the timeline, at the man who'd become so much more than an arrangement. "This is really happening. Once I do this, there's no going back." "I know." Jae-Rin's eyes held hers. "Are you ready?" She thought about Evan's betrayal, about Sora's fake friendship, about her father's warning, about the dangerous, consuming thing growing between her and Jae-Rin. "Yes." She straightened her shoulders. "I'm ready." They worked through the night, Elena filing her case with federal prosecutors, providing evidence that detailed years of financial crimes. By dawn, warrants were being issued. By noon, the news was everywhere. The Kwon and Han families, two of Hanul City's most prominent dynasties, were under federal investigation for embezzlement, fraud, and money laundering. Elena watched the news coverage from Jae-Rin's office, feeling satisfaction mixed with exhaustion. Evan's face appeared on screen, being led into federal custody. Chairman Han was nowhere to be found, already fled to a country without extradition. Sora looked devastated, her perfect life crumbling in real time. "You did it." Jae-Rin stood behind Elena's chair, his hands on her shoulders. "They're finished." Elena leaned back against him, accepting his support. "Why doesn't it feel better?" "Because revenge never feels as good as we think it will." Jae-Rin pressed a kiss to the top of her head. "But justice does. You stopped them from hurting anyone else. That matters." "What happens now?" Elena turned to face him. "Our arrangement was 6 months. We still have 4 months left." "Forget the arrangement." Jae-Rin pulled her to her feet, his hands framing her face. "Marry me, for real, not as part of a plan or a business deal. Marry me because you want to, because you choose me the way I choose you." Elena's breath caught. "That's insane. We've barely known each other 2 months. I've loved you since I saw you at that conference." Jae-Rin's voice was fierce. "I've wanted you since I watched you work a case with the kind of focus most people reserve for breathing. I've needed you since the night you kissed me in that alley and looked at me like I was more than what my name means. 2 months, 2 years, none of it changes what I feel." Elena's eyes filled with tears. "Your world is dangerous. My father barely speaks to me. Everyone I know thinks I've lost my mind. I know. And I would change all of it if I could. but I can't change who I am. Yi-Rin's thumb caught a tear on her cheek. All I can do is promise to protect you, to value you, to love you exactly as you are for as long as you'll let me. Yes, the word came out choked, overwhelmed. Yes, I'll marry you. I'm terrified and it's probably a mistake and my father is going to kill me, but yes. Yi-Rin kissed her then, deep and claiming and full of promise. When they broke apart, both laughing and crying, Elena felt something settle in her chest. Not peace exactly, but rightness. A sense that despite everything, despite the danger and the complications, she was exactly where she belonged. The wedding happened quickly, quietly, without the spectacle Elena had once imagined for herself. Just close friends, Yi-Rin's inner circle who'd become hers as well, and her father who attended despite his reservations. They married at sunrise in the estate gardens, Elena in a simple white dress that made her feel beautiful, Yi-Rin in a black suit that made him look less like a crime lord and more like a man committing himself to forever. I love you, Yi-Rin said when it was just the two of them, the ceremony over, the guests departed. I'll spend the rest of my life making sure you never regret choosing me. I love you too. Elena rose on her toes to kiss him, and I don't regret it, not for a second. 6 months later, Elena stood in the bathroom of their master's suite, staring at a positive pregnancy test, her hands shaking with a mix of fear and joy. When she told Yi-Rin, he looked at her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then he pulled her into his arms and held her like she was the most precious thing in his world. A baby, his voice was rough. We're having a baby. Are you happy? Elena asked because she still sometimes couldn't read him. Yi-Rin pulled back to look at her and his eyes were wet. I've never been happier. You've given me everything I never knew I wanted. A family, a future, love I didn't think I deserved. How could I be anything but happy? Elena's life hadn't turned out the way she'd planned. She'd lost her boyfriend, her best friend, parts of her old life. But she'd gained so much more. A husband who loved her fiercely. A career fighting for justice. A future that was messy and complicated and absolutely perfect. She came to Hanwell City broken by betrayal. She stayed because she chose who she would become. And in choosing herself, she found someone who chose her back with everything he had. That, Elena decided as Yi-Rin's hand settled on her still flat stomach, was worth more than all the perfect plans in the world.